Hey guys, Nim Jr. I've had a few people ask me to make a time-lapse video of my QI system, which is totally understandable considering the fact that the full system is about an hour long, so I don't blame you guys for wanting an abbreviated version of that. I'm willing to do that, and that's what I'm going to do in this video. I'm going to make this one super quick, and it's going to cover the first 5 or 6 days of the season, but there will be a lot of missing information from this video, so if you guys do find yourselves in a pinch, I would encourage you to use the full guide that I've already posted online. That one is indexed by each collection, so you can go to the collection that you're on. So this is difficulty level 2. This is the evening collection. So you can find that collection indexed in the complete guide. The system, the Anti-alchemist, is very surgical. It's a very fast system, so you can gain a lot of ground really quickly. But if you make inaccuracies on the first couple days, it will slow you down more than it's worth. So that's the disclaimer here. With that in mind, let's set up a time lapse. We're already on day 2, obviously, and I did not do a time lapse of the first 2 setups. I'm going to give you guys the cliff notes on that, and we can jump into it. I'll just time lapse the rest of the season. It took me about 3 or 4 seasons to get it really dialed in, so there is some trial and error. I've already done a lot of the trial and error on your guys' behalf, so if you watch the complete guide, you'll possibly save yourself some headache. But if you just want to jump right into it, let's get into the cliff notes of it. So key requirements to this: 5 to 6 expansions at the beginning of the settlement. I would say is required. You can do whatever balance of goods or shards that you want. The system is primarily designed for free players, so I usually stop at the 350 shard expansion. I do not spend more on expansions than that. That's up to you guys, however you want to navigate that, but I would say at least 5 to 6 expansions to start the settlement. So some of those can come from shards, some of those can come from goods from ascended buildings, but at least 5 to 6 would be the threshold there. 40,000 coin per expansion that you intend to add needs to come from your main city on the ascended buildings that you plant before the season starts. This is actually a requirement. It is possible to start a QI settlement with basically 0 additional coin from ascended shit. It is possible to do that, but you'll delay the progress of the settlement by about 2 days in doing so, and at that point it doesn't even make sense to use the system if you're not going to follow the original stipulation. The original stipulation is to have a bunch of space and a bunch of coin to start the season, and later in the season we know that space creates actions. But if you have a bunch of space at the beginning of the settlement that you can't fill up because you don't have enough coin, it's not going to work out very well for you. If you have any questions about that, please refer to the complete guide that I've already posted, because I've covered that information. But do pay attention to the coin part. I mean, if you're 20,000 coin under the threshold where you should be at, so this season here in Khmer, I added 7 expansions. I should have added 280,000 in coin to start the season. I only had 240, so I was off by about 40k. It buffed out, but if you're substantially below that threshold, it will not work out for you. Just trust me on that. The math is already there. I've already done the math on it, so this is the cliff notes for you guys. Plus 50,000 supplies total, regardless of the expansions that you have to work with. Just a total supply boost from ascended stuff would be my recommendation. This is a recommendation. The coin is a requirement. The supplies is a recommendation. It'll make it a little bit easier for you, but it's not a necessary thing. You can actually start with 0 supplies ascended boost and be okay, but it's a little bit more comfortable if you have some supply boost from ascended stuff. Collect and delete is a big part of the pattern, so get used to it. If you don't understand it, watch the complete guide, because it is a big part of the process and the strategy itself. So if you do not understand that, pause the cliff notes, watch the complete guide at this point, and then come back to the cliff notes. Alright, that's it for the introduction. I'm going to time-lapse the rest of the video, and I'm going to give you guys, I'll clear off the screen here, and I'll give you guys the cliff notes on the first 2 collections that I did, just to get you up to speed, and then the rest of the season is just going to be a time-lapse. So the priority is to have most of your housing as estate houses, but on the original construction, you won't have enough coin to do that, so start with a minimum of 8 estate houses, and then everything else is multi-story. The purpose of the 8 estate houses is primarily on the first collection just to compensate for the coin shortage that you'll get by collecting everything at extreme unhappiness. But later in the season, once we're filling up the entire city with estate houses, the primary purpose is actually to reduce population and therefore reduce the demand for happiness that you have to meet as you go through and collect and delete buildings. After the first collection, you'll have enough coin to build the entire settlement with estate houses, but I do recommend keeping a handful of multi-stories just as a thing to actually get multiplied by the coin boost benefit of the estate house. So on your first collection, so 1.2, so Thursday night, on your first collection, collect and delete, get up to happiness, collect all your coins, and then just save all of your alloy, don't make any improvements, save all of your alloy, and rebuild the entire settlement with 90% estate houses and a handful of multi-stories. And then on your second collection, so 2.1, Friday morning, same pattern, collect and delete, get up to happiness, but the benefit of having mostly estate houses means that you'll be getting more alloy on the second collection. If you have at least 500 alloy on the first collection, you are guaranteed to get another 500 alloy on the second collection. So at that point, you'll plant your baker number 1 on the 2.1 collection, so Friday morning. And if you have leftover resources after that, plant a few gallows until you're out of alloy, essentially. That's it for 2.1. That's the springboard that starts the whole season. Just save all of your alloy from the first collection, combine it with the alloy from the second collection to get your first baker. And from here, when we do collect and delete, we'll get up to happiness, to the 150% happiness metric, but also add brewers into the collection process before you collect baker. So that way the brewers don't stay permanently planted in the settlement. We only plant them temporarily to the collection for the purpose of multiplying the baker and making it behave like several bakers, even though we've only got one of them. That's the gist of it. 2.2 is coming up, so I'll post that one next. 2.2, time-lapse. Goal is just to add a couple upgraded cultural buildings. Doctor is my recommendation, but cartographer and pillory are also acceptable. That's the goal from this round. Here's the time-lapse. Alright, that's a wrap for 2.2. Final construction, there's nothing to rush. It's just a couple doctors to speed up the happiness for alloy production on an upcoming cycle. Planted brewers in the process of collecting and deleting housing to collect baker. Simple, super simple. Alright, goal 3.1 is to get another baker, but this is a good opportunity to add extra expansions. So if you do have shards left over from the original construction, plant a goods building and then rush the production of your baker as you collect, and add expansions as you go, and fill those expansions with breweries in order to continue multiplying the collection of the baker. Basically, until you run out of supplies, leave enough to plant a baker at the end. So here's a time lapse of that. Alright guys, 4.2, so Sunday night. I didn't record the collection of 3.2, so Saturday night, or 4.1, Sunday morning. I didn't record those collections, but it's pretty redundant, honestly. Planted another baker, as well as some more cartographers for happiness. In the endgame, I recommend Doctor for the cultural building. I don't think I've touched on that. Doctor is way more efficient on alloy per tile. It's pretty comparable to cartographer or pillory on actions per tile, but in terms of alloy per tile, the Doctor is a lot more efficient. But on the developing stages, I do like Doctor and pillory just because they have a smaller footprint, so it displaces less of your housing, which is the thing that we need to generate alloy. So 4.2, at this point, we've got the happiness that we need, so you can just pretty much immediately collect all of your housing, There's nothing to collect and delete for the housing part. Do not collect your bakers yet, though. Um, we'll still delete the housing and replace with brewers before we collect the baker. That's pretty much the only change once you hit the 150% metric to start your collections. Goal from here is to add 2 more bakers. I would recommend stopping at 6 bakeries total, and then eventually start adding some clapboards into the equation. Depending on how well your troops are holding up in the map, now would be a good time to print additional troops or add some attack power if you need it. You can see that I've already added one of those from this morning just to keep the catapults and stuff that I started with, just to keep those surviving on the map. But this would be a good time to make any of those transitional changes that you need to make. My troops are still doing good with the 1 decoration, so from here, for me, I'll probably add baker number 5, as well as troop building. And there's really no reason to rush it if you're not completely out of troops. Just if you're not out of troops and you still have action space in your action bar, just plan it tonight, and then that way it'll be ready tomorrow. Burn up all of your supplies on the troops once you're able to do that. But that'll be the goal for me. Here's the time lapse. So that's pretty much a wrap for this part of the development. It may not happen on 4.2 for you, but that's the next stage in the city development. Planted the cannon camp for tomorrow. Don't really need to plan it, or don't need to rush it and print troops right now. The troops that I have are still able to survive on the map. Sometimes just 1 or 2 decorations in the map will get you through that difficulty level. So just plan a decoration once you start hitting that wall, and then make a mental note that you need to produce troops on the upcoming collection. Plan baker number 5 and rush the construction of that, so that'll be ready for collection tomorrow. At this point in the development, this is actually a good opportunity to delete some of the gallows that we planted on early in the development. These are helpful in the beginning because it's getting your happiness up to 150% metric a little bit faster, so you're getting more alloy out of your estates. But once you're comfortably starting your collections with well over that metric, now is a good time to delete those. You'll get a little bit of alloy back from them, and eventually in the end game these would get replaced with something like a doctor or cartographer anyways. So we already have plenty of extra happiness even before the addition of the doctor, but we can start working towards the end game goal of generating a lot of actions. Again, no need to rush that. That'll be ready for the upcoming collection. Still have 68 alloy left and a pretty healthy amount of supplies, so 1.5 million in supplies, almost 1.6 million. So that'll cover our troop cost tomorrow. And then from here, continue the same pattern. Stop at 6 bakers, so we'll get 1 more baker tomorrow, and then consolidate some of our housing into clapboards, and pretty much into the end game. So that's 4.2. I'll time lapse this and add it to the previous group of videos, and we'll call it a wrap. Alrighty guys, 5.1, so Monday morning, the goal is just to get clapboard, or baker number 6 plus a clapboard house, and then we'll use the rest of the resources from production to generate some troops. So here's the time lapse. So that's a wrap. Added baker number 6, doctor, as well as a clapboard house. Printed plenty of troops. A little over 500 of those, so we're done with that. That'll give us some alloy back that we can use for another cultural building, just so we're starting to ramp up the actions a little bit. That's it for 5.1. Alrighty guys, 6.2, so Tuesday night. I've omitted a handful of collections from this little compilation, but once you guys understand the pattern, it's just a city full of estate houses. Use that to generate alloy, make 1 substantial improvement every round, so we're adding clapboards, bakers, cartographer for happiness primarily. In the end game, we obviously want to add cartographer and doctor for action production, but in the developing stages, we're just adding those for the purpose of maintaining our happiness. So city full of estate houses, 1 substantial improvement, 1 or 2 substantial improvements every single collection. Towards this point in the development, you'll start using your extra resources to generate troops. So I still have 510 cannons out of the 500 that I produced a few days ago. Get all of your expansions. I have 2 more to go on the good side. I will not buy the shards expansion. I've done the math on that one too, by the way, if you're curious, and space is worth actions. That is the basic principle of my system. But the 400 shard expense is actually better used just towards buying actions outright. So at this point in the development, just continue finishing up your expansions, get all the troops you need, and then there's going to be a transition in here where we're done with the developing stage, but don't have enough resources to fill everything up with doctors or cartographer immediately. So there is kind of a transition point where you just maintain your development, your settlement development, maintain that for a couple days. I usually get all of my goods expansions, so the 580 as well as the 700 that comes after that. I usually get both of those, and I haven't really done the math on whether or not that's cost effective. So this would be a good opportunity for you guys to jump in if you have comments on the video or on the system. Like I've done the math and I know that this is not cost effective, but whether or not the 700 on the goods is cost effective would be a good question. I haven't actually done the math on that. I usually do the 700 goods expansion just because why not? But there's a possibility that the amount of resources it takes to produce that would actually slow down the action production of a city that is generating complete actions a day sooner. So that's a possibility if you guys want to contribute to that. Other than that, though, we're pretty much done with the development. I am going to at least get the 580 goods expansion off of this collection. We've got 6 bakers, 6 cartographers, enough happiness to sustain that. 1 decoration for attack power. And that got me through the transition of had catapults. They were starting to die on the map, but I wasn't quite ready to print cannons, so I planted 1 decoration just to sustain on the map for a day. So here we are now. Same pattern, collect and delete all your coin, and then replace with brewers to collect your bakers, so I'll do a time skip of that. But this is pretty much the end of the development. I would be curious to hear your guys' thoughts on how many expansions you typically go for. Their space is worth time in the grand scheme of things. That's a fact. We can mathematically prove that. But how much space do you actually need, and where's the breaking point? When does it stop being worth the investment? So that's a good question to ask. And if you guys have opinions on that, I would like to hear your thoughts. Let me do the collection real quick, and I think we'll call it a wrap for this little mini series. Alright, collection is done. I got enough goods to get 1 more expansion. I think I'm actually going to stop at the 580. I typically do get all of my goods expansions, but just for kicks and giggles for this video, I'm wondering if that's maybe not cost effective. I'm curious to hear you guys' thoughts. If you have opinions on that, please let me know. But for this round, the way I want to play it, I'm going to stop there. I do recommend leaving all of your brewers planted on the final collection once you're done with city development. So at this point, my city development is done. I've printed all the troops I need. I've got all the expansions I want. I've produced as many bakers and clapboard houses as I want. So my development is done. I do recommend leaving your breweries planted overnight following your completed collection. And the purpose of that is just to squeeze out a few more supplies for the upcoming collection. So if you look at what I've got now, a little over 18 million in coin. That's really never going to be the issue. Little over 1 million in supplies and close to 4,700 in alloy. So supplies, right now there's a shortage. In the grand scheme of things, the shortage is actually going to be on alloy as we start filling things up with doctor and cartographer and stuff. The main shortage is just going to be on alloy, actually. But for the upcoming collection for tomorrow morning, just leave your brewers planted overnight to squeeze out the last little bit of supplies on those. You'll be able to swipe everything. There's no collect and delete for that collection. Just be able to swipe everything and then immediately delete brewer and replace with doctor. So that would be the 7.1 collection is a city full of doctors on a big footprint, no less. Like, I mean, I get that there's players out there that are completing their settlements with doctors, by Saturday morning or whatever. But I could have done that 3 collections ago if I hadn't added as much space as I've added. So that's the trade-off. That's ultimately the question to you guys if you do want to chime in on this video. where you actually stop at the goods expansions. I usually get all of them, but I don't, just kind of intuitively, I don't necessarily think the 700 is justified on the cost. So I stopped at the 580 on this round, and I'm curious to hear you guys' input on that. But that's a wrap for 6.2 and pretty much the development of the season. You guys can picture where this is going from here. So I'll talk to you later. God bless and goodbye.